Our president and our Congresswoman Sherry Bustos are in Cuba right now, helping to build on the relationships that have already been established. But if we look at this, we find that the United States has had a long history with Cuba, dating way back. Let me take you just to a couple of examples. Even before the American Civil War, under the presidency of James Pierce, he ordered our three main diplomatic officials in Europe, Buchanan and from the UK, you have representatives to France and to Spain to meet in Ostend, Belgium. And what they agreed to was what came to be known in 1854 as the Ostend Manifesto, which was that if Spain didn't sell Cuba to the United States, that we would have every reason to take it. Well, you can imagine. Why? Because Southerners especially were afraid that Cuba might become another free black republic in the Caribbean like Haiti, and thus be an encouragement to slaves in the South to rebel. Well, this hit the news, but it didn't have the desired effect. The press in the North, the Free Soil Press, just excoriated it and said that this was just another way to expand slavery, and the Pierce administration wound up having to disavow it. That didn't end American interests, though, in Cuba. They remained strong. After the Civil War, with the growth of American investments and trade, leading eventually to a Cuban revolution against Spain, which led to American intervention in the Spanish-American War. Coming out of that war, the United States Congress passed what was called the Platt Amendment to an Army Appropriations Bill, which required a treaty with Cuba for the withdrawal of American troops on condition that Cuba would now be a protectorate of the United States. In other words, Cuba could run itself as long as it didn't interfere with the interests of the United States. So Cuba, in effect, was at best semi-independent. This also led to the acquisition permanently of Guantanamo Bay as a Navy station for the United States. This lasted until President Franklin Roosevelt announced a good neighbor policy, which put an end to that protectorate. But in reality, for quite some time, the American ambassador was the most important official in Cuba until Castro comes to power and the relations after that deteriorate. Obama and Bustos are there now because Pope Francis opened the door for relations to be established. He felt the embargo had long outlived its purposes and in fact was hurting the poor in Cuba, and that it was time for the United States to put away this long history of bad relations and to restore relations. And he, along with Canada, were instrumental in brokering that deal. And that's why they're there, is to build on what had already been set up through Pope Francis. And now the embargo to some extent is still in place. Only Congress can rescind that. Whether they will is a good question, but diplomatic relations have been restored. Trades going back and forth, flights going back and forth, tourist groups going back and forth. And the hope is that this is going to moderate the Cuban regime over time, and there are indications that that will happen.